Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Ask Zach. Today I'm here in front of a whiteboard because we are doing something a little bit different today. We're going to be answering a question that a lot of you guys have had, which is what is going on in the book of Revelation? And more than that, what is going on in the end times? So I just wanted to give a quick overview of the book of Revelation to give you guys confidence as well as excitement while you're reading that book. And so we're going to start out over here on chapters 1 through 3. In the book of Revelation, chapters 1 through 3 is speaking to the Apostle John and is talking about the present time that John is in. So these are the 7 letters that we have to the churches. This is where John receives the vision that he is going to explain throughout the rest of this book. And so this is the present time for John. Then, in right before verse 4 is where I included this, would say at this church that this is where the rapture happens. So the church is taken up to be with the Lord, and they are then in heaven with God. Which gets us to verse 4 and verse 5. In chapters 4 and 5, we narrow in and we look up at heaven, where we see the church and all those who have been bought by the blood of Christ, that they are worshiping God in heaven in verses 4 and 5. Then, for the most part, and there's a couple times, like I think of Revelation 7, where we get back into heaven, but chapters 6 through 19 are talking about the time here on earth, looking at earth. And on earth, there's a 7-year tribulation. This is where God is judging unbelievers on earth, doing different things like the 7 seals and the scrolls and the bowls. That is all taking place in chapters 6 through 19. So the church is gone. God is punishing the unbelievers in chapters 6 through 19. Then, at the end of chapter 19 is when, right before chapter 20, is when Christ returns. And as Christ returns, he returns in Armageddon. This big war takes place where God comes out of heaven and he returns. And that's where we see Jesus coming in on a white horse. And he destroys those who are here on earth during this 7-year period. So Christ returns, Armageddon happens. He returns here on earth. And then we get chapter 20, which is referred to the millennial kingdom. This is where now that Christ's return and has placed unbelievers for that time, the demons, in a pit, not yet the lake of fire. He's placed them in the pit. And in the pit, this is where they will no longer wreak havoc on earth. And while they're there, the church comes back down from heaven and they reign here on earth with Jesus for 1,000 years. So for 1,000 years, all those bought by the blood of Christ come back to the earth, this earth, where Jesus reigns. He reigns for 1,000 years with us in our glorified bodies. And then, at the end of those 1,000 years, I'm getting out of here. At the end of those 1,000 years, we get right away the white throne judgment. That is where God, he will judge every single unbeliever. Before they are in a temporary place called Hades, God will then, it's in the middle of chapter 20, but it's after the millennial kingdom, God will then punish all of those unbelievers who had not repented of their sins and their names are not in the book of life. He will throw them into the lake of fire for their permanent destiny. That is where they will rest for all of eternity. And so that is the lake of fire, which happens at the white throne judgment. Then God destroys the earth where he was reigning for 1,000 years, and he makes a new heaven and new earth. And that is what we call the eternal state, which is being spoken about in Revelation 21 and 22. That is the place where we will reign for the rest of eternity, where we will worship God in the streets of gold, and where God will forever be our joy. So that is the book of Revelation, chapters 1 all the way through 22. Thanks for listening.